Hello and welcome to Where My Prose At with myself Ken and my lovely wife Kitten Features.
Kitten Features, and we have a special guest today. This is a very rare species of bumblebee called a bumblebrute. It is native to Scotland and America. And normally he sits off camera and him and his brother, and he looks kind of sad, but he's a mama's boy, and I just let him up on my lap today. And
we were worried he would fidget too much, but he's immediately fallen asleep lying like that.
Immediately fallen asleep, yeah.
Because he's the vicious species of Staffy.
This is Brutus, our between 4 and 6 year old rescue Staffy. He is obviously a terrifying, violent predator. You should watch your cupcakes around him, also your small children, and just fearsome creature. Evidently, yeah.
Today we're going to be reviewing To Kill a Mockingbird
by Harper Lee. Now this is a classic. Everyone that I've talked to about this has been like, oh, I read that in high school, I read that in elementary school, and so we want to say that there's going to be spoilers like there always is in all of our reviews. So if you have not read this book, or if you did read it like in high school and you haven't read it recently, please go read it and then tune in, because it is excellent. It's a classic for a reason, and don't deprive yourself.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I kind of gave it away how I was feeling about
fine. That's okay.
How I'm feeling about the book.
Give us a brief overview of what you think about the book in general.
I love this book. I had never read it before, or if I had read it, it was in for English class, and I think there is this discussion to be said about high school students or middle school students reading these kind of like Faulkner, Hemingway, or even Harper Lee, and not quite grasping it because the subject matter is a bit above your head. But I don't know, oddly enough, I think, sorry to go on a little tangent here, I think this book actually is something that you could read at pretty much any age.
Yes. And
understand it and get something from it.
I think you understand different layers depending on your level of education and how mature you are as a human being. But so you enjoyed the book?
Oh, it's a classic for a reason. I would call it, if I were to sum it up in one statement, I would say it's a study in empathy.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was probably one of the main themes, and it's the kind of thing it was interesting how we were in the car today, and we were just talking about how they're picking the jury for George Floyd's trial, and how that really does tie in to Kill a Mockingbird. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Please tell me, what did you think of the book? Because I absolutely loved it. I've seen the movie. The movie is excellent, but the book just blew my socks off.
So I've got 2 points to make here for sort of general overview. One is I was speaking last night, because I was only halfway through the book last night, and I was speaking to Graham, and I was saying, I always feel rather intimidated reading these classic literature novels, because there's usually so much symbolism and meaning, and I would say at least half of it tends to go over my head, and I'm generally quite intimidated by that.
I would say that actually kind of probably feeds into the whole not reading it before you're ready.
Yeah.
Because when you read it as a high schooler, and it kind of takes the beauty out of it. It's this assignment that you have to do,
but you also get it explained to you as well, which is quite useful. Your hand is held as you go through it. So but also the problem is I think English teachers often add symbolism.
Oh, I've had horrible English teachers. I've had great English teachers.
Yeah.
When I was at my Catholic school, he was awesome, but other than that, they've all been absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about English.
I've had a couple of good English teachers, but several bad ones, and I've heard stories about authors who say they'll check the spark notes for their own book, and they'll say, oh, the curtains are blue because the guy was sad or something to reflect inner melancholy, and the author's like, no, the curtains are blue. It's sometimes English teachers will find meaning where there is none, and I suppose, but it's art, and that's kind of the way it's supposed to be, I suppose. Anyway, so one of my 2 things I wanted to say was that I was a little intimidated by the concept of the book, and I thought it would go over my head. The second thing is that when I was halfway through the book, I felt like the first half wasn't very impactful. I felt like it was well written, but it felt so disconnected, because I'm a white guy who grew up in Scotland. I'm not in the south of the US, and I grew up in the 90s, not in the 30s and 40s. So I didn't really feel connected to the culture, and I didn't really understand some of the comments and the rituals that took place as part of their society and so on. So at that point, I just wasn't really feeling the book. Halfway through, I was not really feeling it. I didn't really feel the point. I thought it was going to be, one of these kind of classic American stories that didn't really have a true thread of a story, and it seems to just be like
like a snapshot.
A snapshot of that life. And I thought that was okay, and I was like, fine, but I don't think I'm going to enjoy that. Then I got to the second half of the book, and I wept. And I'm happy to say, because it was really emotionally touching.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Wasn't it just truly touching? It touched your soul.
I cried as well. I cried twice. I mean, it is the kind of book that reaches into your soul, into your heart, and makes you remember what it is to be human, and makes you remember what it is to relate to another person, as Atticus Finch would say, to walk in another's shoes. And I just think that message and that very simple moral that we're taught as young children, because it is told from the eyes of a child. I think it was a really powerful scene when Atticus is sitting outside of the jail, and that mob comes up. It's a great scene, but Scout had no idea what was going on, and she's like, "Oh, Mr. Cunningham, I know your son. He came to have dinner with us, the other night." Da 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 da. And it wasn't until this complete innocence of a child, who of course is going to treat everyone like how she interacts with them, not with the color of their skin, anything like that. It's it just, that really got me.
Yeah.
Is that we don't really, not to be totally cliche, but we aren't born racist. We aren't born.
It's learned.
It's learned, and it's just. It just makes you really sad and heartsick that people feel the need to have this in their lives and to push this agenda. It makes me really sad that even today, this story, you would have hoped that it had gotten better. This was taken place in the 1930s, and even today, like I said, we were driving in the jury selection for George Floyd's trial. It just feels like things aren't getting better.
Yeah.
But they must be.
It was a very good point that, even though the law had recently changed in that area, in Alabama, I believe it was based, a black man could get a job and had equal rights as any other American. But it doesn't, no matter how many rules you set in place, it doesn't change the fact that the jury, the judge, the lawyers, and the court of society all will be basing all of their decisions that they make throughout a trial on their inherent racism. And I thought that was a really powerful statement that was explained very well, because it's a tricky concept to conceptualize. That's quite difficult to actually state and explain. But when it was explained in the book, it felt so obvious and in your face. And I really appreciate that by the author.
Yeah.
That was impressive.
Oh yeah, it's like I said, it's a titan of English literature. It's a classic for a reason. And Atticus Finch, I know, has launched. Even my mother, she's a lawyer, and she said about how Atticus Finch, was kind of one of the first instances of oh, I want to be a lawyer like that. Because we have these ideas of lawyers as these skeezy kind of do anything to get. Yeah, exactly, and a lot of them are, but. Really, like Atticus said, he's the court is the only place where every man is created equal, and that should be how we govern, how we're governing. I know, I agree, how we govern ourselves, and that's what justice should be. But it's not, and I wish we had more Atticus Finches in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
And scouts.
And scouts. And gyms.
Yes, for sure. And booths.
And cows.
So we read the book differently. I enjoyed the audiobook, which by the way is for free on YouTube. I don't know if it's legal, but it's certainly available on YouTube.
You find that with a lot of these classics, that they are usually available on YouTube, and I think
it's almost at the time for copyright. If it is in the 30s it was written, I'm not sure if it's 30s or 40s, but that's coming close to the 80 to 100 year mark depending on where it was written and published. So regardless, it's quite an easy thing to find. I thoroughly enjoyed the audiobook. I didn't feel like the narrator added much. I feel like it was just the book. I feel like I just read the book, which is not a bad thing. I think if you notice the narrator, it means they're adding things, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, sometimes that could be
really useful.
Yeah.
I mean, there were certainly accents added, so you could tell when it was a southern black person speaking, versus a white person, because there was cultural differences in speech, which was...
It's funny that you said that, though. Do you remember the scene where Calpurnia, she spoke, Scout was like, why is she speaking different at the black church than she does at home? And she had to explain to her. And I love this book for being able to boil down these really complex, staggering themes into such a simple but effective way. It's magic. So I think that there were actually so many interesting characters in the book. I mean, I think Atticus would be my favorite character, but do you have a favorite?
So Atticus, I think we should just discuss him for a little while regardless.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
He's a fascinating character. I think he represents a utopic viewpoint of how society should be, and the trouble with also aiming for a utopic viewpoint. So he had this idea where he always saw the best in everybody, and when somebody did something that was wrong or illegal or immoral, he assumed that was it, over and done with, they should get out of their system, and then that was that, and they'll go back to normalcy. And we saw a couple times where that assumption actually caused some damage. So the character that had the knife, and he's an example of a character who, if it was alerted beforehand, because I think it was Scout and Jem who were trying to convince Atticus to actually report him as a potential threat. As a potential threat, and he didn't. He refused to, because he said, "Oh, he's a guy out of his system. That's all I wanted to do." But that caused him not reporting that and not acting upon that potential threat. Actually helped. Well, then it didn't cause, but it didn't prevent some of the atrocities that happened in the book. So while I do thoroughly enjoy Atticus and I love his character, but this is probably why I enjoyed his character so much, is it's somewhat flawed, because having this utopic viewpoint and aiming for the absolute best part of society, you have to make some false assumptions about how society has grown and some false assumptions about the people in society, which he did. He saw the best in people, and the best wasn't even there.
Yeah. Or if it was there, it long ago eroded. Speaking of Yules or Ewes or however it is that you say the last name, I know it was quite a dramatic scene, when they're walking home from the play. But I couldn't help but giggle a little bit to think of Scout in her...
Oh, that was so funny.
Her pork costume. Like it's the only thing that saved her life is wearing this ridiculous wire paper mache or whatever pork costume.
It was the part where she fell asleep in the play, and when she finally realized it was her turn, because she heard the orchestra play after she was supposed to go out. Like, I think everybody else had cleared the stage, and she just bumbles out onto the stage with big pork. And I think it said that one of the other teachers was like killing himself laughing in the background, trying not to make a noise. I felt that like in my soul. Like, I've experienced that. It's like in school, you're trying to keep quiet and you're laughing. Yeah, that's exactly. I felt it. I thought it was a very funny scene.
Did you ever do any ridiculous, school play costumes or anything like that?
No. Like my parts in plays were. People.
I was my very first acting debut at my elementary school was I was a cactus.
Wow.
Socorro cactus, and they made the costume out of felt, and I thought I was going to die. It was so warm underneath the stage lights, and you couldn't even move. You had to hold up your arms like this, just a little cactus. So I understood what Scout was going through there. Speaking of Scout, what a great character as well. I love how not only is she understanding, racism and the lines of, class division in the South, but also how to be a lady and what it means for her to be a lady in the South.
The whole gender discussion is fascinating for that era, because I think the idea of a tomboy, and I hate that phrase because it's kind of sexist, but the idea of like a tomboy you don't really hear it in popular media until later on, like the 70s, 80s, and more so 90s and noughties.
She definitely would have been considered a tomboy with her overalls and wanting to play with the boys, and there was even a passage about how she liked men better. I think understood them better, and she women, and I get that. Scout saying how she preferred men, and they just were a bit more straightforward with things. I do kind of understand that there is a certain
it's a social intelligence.
hierarchy with women where we are a bit, in my experience, and I don't want to generalize my sex, I don't want to generalize every group of women ever, but I did go to the school in the South, and I have had a little bit of experience with women who are in a bit more of a rigid kind of structure, whether due to religion or, you know, just being in the South.
I think social intelligence is different between men and women on average. On average, women, generally speaking, are more intelligent than men when it comes to socializing and social hierarchies and structures. And I think that the author does a good job of mentioning that through the eyes of a child. And that there was the dinner scene or the tea scene where the women are clearly having they're having a discussion about how they're basically saying that they think that the lawyer father was wrong for supporting the black man's cause, is effectively the summation of it. And one of them disagreed, and they had this sort of back and forth spat while not directly saying anything until one of the women had enough, and she just directly looked at her, glared, and stated her point, which I thought was very good. But it all went over Scout's head. Scout just didn't even really understand why that came around or what was happening.
Yeah, I mean, it is that kind of like the women do seem to have different social cues for each other and stuff like that. Like often I'll be like, how can you not understand that, Kenneth, when you're like, I had no idea that's what you're trying to tell me. Yep. You know, like when you're at a party and you really want to leave and you're like trying to like get your partner to notice, and he's just like, oh, are you okay? You got something in your eye? And like, no.
We've all been there. We all know what that's like. Both sides. What about the older brother character? How did you find him?
I like Jim. I always forget about Jim. He's a good balance to Atticus and Scout, you know, and Scout, who's very pure emotion, pure, like, she has a good heart, but she is kind of feisty, and Jim is a bit more kind of even-toned, but not as even-keel as Atticus is. He's still got the passion of Scout, but the even-keel of Atticus, and I enjoyed him. I thought he was a really important character, but I do forget about him often.
I think he's important towards the end, and I feel like he was kind of like added in retroactively to the rest of the story. That's kind of what it felt like. He was kind of a backseat character for the first half of the book, anyway.
You gonna fly away, little bumblebee? No, we're just getting done. No, we're just getting cozier.
Don't look at me. I'm not gonna save you. You
can be saved.
He's choosing to be there. Okay, goodbye.
Fly away, little bumblebee. Fly away. Oh, it feels good to stretch. So I like Jim. I like the character Jim. Dill is a good character as well. I thought it was quite sweet, him and Scout, you know, their kind of like engagement or whatever.
But yeah, I thought it was silly because she was like 8 at the time. So I thought Boo was also a fascinating character.
Oh, that was a really like interesting character as well. I loved how was it Scout who said, I realized why he never leaves his house because maybe he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
But it was, I don't know, it felt like such a real life, like the entire like book felt so real. And I know you said you were as interested in the beginning where it's kind of stories of like, you know, being young in the South, and I just think it was really important though because it just, that emotional impact later on, I agree.
It was setting up the story. I still feel like it could have been more interesting. It was just a lot of when you're first reading it, you don't really see the setups. But Boo is a character that they continually were trying to see because they were fascinated by the fact there was a man in the neighborhood that they had not met before. It's a very small town.
Small town.
It's very strange. So the kids made up all these stories about what they thought this guy was doing. He's probably murdering all the neighborhood dogs or something. He's creepy, and and all these made up lies and fantasies about who this guy was. And so they tried to get him out of his house to the point where at one point, Boo, all he knew was there was an intruder in his back garden, so he shot into the air a couple of times.
That was his Arthur Radley, though. I think that was his father that shot into the...
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, I think because there was a father... I don't know. I was a little confused about the lineage. There was Nathan...
I don't think the rest really matters too much. I think the only thing that really matters is that Boo had trauma growing up. That's basically the backstory. And because of that trauma, he has some PTSD and such and does not like going outside. Yeah. That's pretty much it, right?
But then when Jim is in his collard greens and he loses his trousers, which is quite a funny scene as well. He comes back and they've been mended and folded over the fence, and I think that is also a tale of empathy, whereas like someone you don't know,
Yeah.
but you still go out of your way to be kind to them, even though they're messing with your collard greens. Like,
yeah, it's helping somebody who is kind of your enemy, and that's
Yeah.
and actually speaking of this kind of empathy, I think that a part of the story is about what Christianity once was and what it could or should be, which is this idea of loving thy enemy, right?
loving thy neighbor.
loving
as
thy
well.
neighbor and loving thy enemy.
Turning the other cheek.
That's what happened repeatedly throughout this book. Admittedly, I think we see the weakness of that through Atticus, as I said earlier, but I really enjoyed that through Boo as well. I thought it was well explained.
I think it also just goes to show how important the single individual is. Most people are good. I want to believe that most people are good people that don't judge others.
I have a few quotes that I would like to share that are some of my favorites. I think I favored like 25 from this book. Usually I get 3 or 4, but there were just so many good quotes.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
I really did. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb inside his skin and walk around in it. Until I feared I would lose it, I never loved to read. One does not love breathing.
I love that.
That's so good, isn't it?
I love that.
It's very true as well. I wanted you to see what real courage is, instead of getting the idea that courage is a man with a gun in his hand. It's when you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway and see it through, no matter what. Atticus Finch. People generally see what they look for and hear what they listen for. The one thing that doesn't abide by majority rule is a person's conscience.
That was the mob. Wasn't it? They were discussing the mob.
Yeah. Atticus told me to delete the adjectives and I'd have the facts. It's quite a good rule for
Pretty
lawyers.
good, yeah.
I think there's just one kind of folks. And here's the quote I butchered earlier on. Sometimes the Bible in the hand of one man is worse than a whiskey bottle in the hand of another. There are just some kind of men who are so busy worrying about the next world they'll never learn to live in this one. And you can look down the street and see the results.
Yeah. Even if you do think that this is a trial run for the next life, or you should still not make it hard on
Not
the
try
other
to score
people.
points based on some invisible scoreboard.
Well, I was thinking more like, don't make it just, we should all live by the golden rule. Don't make it difficult for other people. Just don't. If you can go out of your way to just not be a dick, just don't be a dick. It's harder than you think it is.
Wheaton's Law.
Don't be a dick. Don't be a dick.
Here's another one. As you grow older, you'll see white men cheat black men every day of your life. But let me tell you something, and don't you forget it. Whenever a white man does that to a black man, no matter who he is, how rich he is, or how fine a family he comes from, that white man is trash. Yeah, that's a freaking amazing quote. It was times like these when I thought my father, who hated guns and had never been to any wars, was the bravest man who ever lived.
Oh, now that was kind of a funny aside where I had to explain to you, Ken just, because he grew up in Scotland, he just didn't understand why this dog was such a big deal,
Yeah.
And I remember, I was telling you about how I went at my elementary school. Actually, funnily enough, our school mascot was the Beagles. We had to close down everything, shut all the doors, stay away from the doors and stuff like that, because a rabid beagle just wandered into the elementary school. Now this was way out in the boondocks of Virginia, and it was a summer's day, spring summer's day, just leave the doors open, and that would happen occasionally, get birds and all sorts, but a mad dog is something you need to worry about, definitely, in the South. Yeah.
So strange. Another one.
Yeah, because you don't have rabies in Scotland.
Oh yeah, so rabies is all but extinct in the UK.
Blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's some wildlife that you might get it from, but like you'll still get a rabies shot if you go in and
You'd have to go out of your way.
Something. But what bites you in the UK anyway? It's just dogs, and the dogs are all.
There's foxes. There's
They
badgers.
don't really bite. They don't really. Badgers avoid people like crazy. I've never seen a badger in my life.
I've never seen an alive fox in Scotland.
Oh, you have. I'd point them at you, yeah.
Oh.
And you mentioned that you thought Atticus was very stoic, and I agree. And this is the quote that I liked, that I thought, "It's never an insult to be called what somebody thinks is a bad name. It just shows you how poor that person is. It doesn't hurt you."
Now that's one that I need to like put in my heart because I have a scout-like temper, and like I'm like, oh no, I'll fight you, but you know that's Atticus is right. You know, it just, that's a reflection on someone else that, you know, that rather than you usually.
Yeah. Or if you're throwing the mean words around, it's a reflection on yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One final quote I'll share. I've got many more here, but I'll do one final one. If there's just one kind of folks, why can't they get along with each other? If they're all alike, why do they go out their way to despise each other? Scout, I think I'm beginning to understand something. I think I'm beginning to understand why Boo Radley's shut up in the house all this time. It's because he wants to stay inside.
God, I feel that.
How would you rate this book?
20 out of 10. I don't think that you can rate this book. It's a classic. It is probably one of the most important books I've read in a very long time. I think this is probably one of the most important books I have ever read. Now, I said a similar thing about 1984, and I still stand by that. I think that I'm just so happy that we do this show because it gives me a chance to kind of like read books that I normally wouldn't read, or, you know, revisit books that I've read before, and it just gives us a chance to kind of try out different literature. It's not like, you know, you always hear, read this book is great, you should read To Kill a Mockingbird, it's excellent, da 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 da, but it's one of those things, I don't know if you guys are like that, but where someone tells me, oh, you should read this, it's great, or you should watch this is great, I'm like, yeah, I will. But at my own time, you know, like, yeah. You don't like people telling you what to do.
There is a psychological thing there, same with music and such, right? When somebody says you should listen to this song, you're like, I will go out of my way not to listen to this song.
Yeah, which is so weird, because usually if someone likes you enough to be like, hey, yeah, this is excellent, I want you to share in this excellent, wonderful feeling. Yeah. You know, it's very counterproductive. Oh, my best friend is exactly like that. Honestly, she drives me bonkers. But sorry, I digress.
So are you.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
No,
you are exactly like that.
No, I'm not.
We all are.
Oh, you are too.
I know I am.
Okay,
I agree.
So we all are, yeah.
I would say this is like, so we were actually talking recently about which of all the books we've reviewed, which ones would be our favourites, and I think that would be a fun show for us to do by itself. By the way, that could be fun.
Oh yeah.
So I won't give away too much, but I'll say that this book is definitely in my top few books of all time because it was so impactful. It was so well written. It's something I'll think about a lot. I think that it says a lot about society in that era. Yeah. And how that has barely changed since. I would rate this book as being a fantastic one. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think the audiobook was very enjoyable. It's one of those books that I will certainly read again.
It nurtures your soul. It's an enjoyable read. I kept doing that thing where I'm like, okay, I'll just read this chapter and then I'll go do whatever it is that I'm going to go do. And I just, like 5 chapters later, it's not preachy. It's not hard to understand. It's not written in this like difficult, complex language. It's a very
accessible,
good-hearted story that I would challenge anyone to read this book and not take away something from it, like genuinely, unless you were purposely trying to be obstinate and ignorant, that's a whole other thing. But anyone who reads this book with an open heart and open mind is gonna walk away a better person. Yeah,
this has got the Where My Prose At award for being where my prose is at.
Yes, this is where the prose is at. Yeah, we were wondering. Oh, well, okay, pack it in, guys. All right, that's it. We're done.
So speaking of this book and our thoughts on it, and we mentioned before the idea of movies and such, we actually have, we did a bit of brainstorming. We have a plan for the next month or two of how we're going to be doing our show. So we've moved on to this YouTube only format, but we want to also cover some movies and stuff as well. Not in general, we're not trying to make this a movie review. This is not going to be a movie review show. No. But we want to talk about the movies that are of the books that we have discussed.
Because movies is actually one of my passions as well. I absolutely love film. I love movies. I love the escapism, and you know, it's just a double whammy for me if I read a good book and there's a good movie as well. Now, not all the films on our list are good films, so I'm kind of looking forward to that as well. Yes. I think most of them are actually.
Well, some of them have remakes and such as well, but we'll get onto that in a moment, though.
Yeah.
So for the upcoming next few weeks, this is what we're planning. This week is To Kill a Mockingbird. Next week is Lifelike, as we mentioned before. Please see the book on the screen here for more info.
It's our community choice. Thank you very much, Beck. Yeah, thank you very much, Beck. Looking forward to reading it.
After that, we have Like Water for Chocolate, and that was your choice?
Yeah. Sorry, I've gotten 2 here.
That's okay. Yeah, don't worry, we're tallying. We're keeping a tally. She doesn't get all the choices. After that is going to be Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. This is actually a gift that you gave me.
That's right. Yeah, it's one of our special. We have a special shelf here of like our leather-bound books, and that's one of the ones here. And I got that for your, what birthday was that?
Last one, 29th.
29th. So his 29th birthday, got you that, and got it from my parents. Have a house in Iowa, so right on the Mississippi River, which is pretty cool. Yeah. And we use bookshop.
So I thought that was a good choice because it's a classic as well, and it's something that everybody should read once.
And I've never read it. So
I know Tom Sawyer is before that. That's the first book in the series.
Yeah.
But I've looked it up, and this is perfect. It's perfectly reasonable to read this standalone, so it should be fine, even if you haven't read the first one. I haven't.
And Mark Twain.
It's Mark Twain. We have to. Yeah. It was inevitable that at some point we had to get to Mark Twain.
Oh, absolutely.
You have to.
Yeah.
After that, we have a community choice. That's going to be
that's yet to be determined.
Yet to be determined. So please submit your thoughts to us on our various social medias. Feel free to post on our Instagram or wherever.
Just remember, or our Goodreads, that's probably the easiest way to reach me specifically. Just remember that we would like to keep it below about 300 pages. Yes. We do read quite a lot, and we don't want to do anything that's too strenuous either. So we try to avoid nonfiction books as well. So no.
Yeah, nothing that I've chosen in the past. Right?
No physics.
I love nonfiction. I read a lot of nonfiction. However, it's not easy to discuss things like themes and such. It's usually just discussing facts. And it's less of a book review, and it's more of a discussion on life.
And I love biographies. Like, I absolutely love biographies, but I don't think that's appropriate. So this is very much a fiction.
So any fiction is under 300 pages is acceptable.
Yep.
Okay, next up we have, I can't read that.
An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge by Ambrose Bierce. It is a short story, and even though it's a short story, I think it's like 2 pages. It's excellent, and I'm very much looking forward to discussing that with you because it addresses one of your fears.
Thanatophobia.
I'm not telling you.
I don't have agoraphobia. Thanatophobia.
You would definitely have arachnophobia.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's not arachnophobia.
So thanatophobia is the fear of death, which I do have, and arachnophobia is the other one I have to some extent, but I'm mostly over it these days. I wouldn't touch one, but... okay, so after all those books, that's the next 5 we've discussed.
Yep.
After that, we're going to do a few weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, maybe a month's worth, of movie discussions. Now, the way we're going to do that is kind of in the air right now, but effectively what we want to do is try to do an individual video for different movies. So instead of us, doing, because I think we're not going to be talking for too long about each one, so I think we're going to be maybe 10-minute videos. And originally we were planning on just doing a normal show once a week type of thing and squeezing them all in, but that'd be really tough for the search engine for people to find and enjoy. We'd much rather just have these be separate entities that we record individually as we watch the films.
And maybe we'll stitch them together like Frankenstein's corpse. Dr. Frankenstein's corpse. Dr. Frankenstein's monster. That's it. Yep.
Not his corpse.
Not his corpse. Well, I mean, it was a corpse.
I suppose you're telling it's corpses.
But then it goes from corpse to being a monster when he
and it's multiple corpses is put together.
Yeah, that's true.
So
okay, so we might put it together. We might stitch it together. We might not. But we'll see. We'll see how it is.
We're going to be covering so many. Okay, let's just briefly go over all these.
Are you sure? Wait. Let me do this part.
Okay.
So we're going to be covering, so we're going to try and go kind of a trip down memory lane. We're going to start off with the first book we ever did on the show. That is the 2 versions of the Stepford Wives. I've seen the one with Nicole Kidman. I think it was vastly underrated. It is a dark comedy and people just did not get it. I don't know. I haven't seen it in a while. We're going to watch it again. Let's see if that opinion holds true. We're also going to watch the 1970s version, I think, as well. Yeah, the original. After that, I think we're going to be doing your first choice for the show.
I can't read the list from here. What is it?
Which is Murder on the Orient Express.
Okay.
So there's the older version and the Johnny Depp version. So
it's the lights that are around us, like, they're like blinding me. I don't know how you can see that.
I think you're just kind of blind to begin with, though.
No, I actually can read it if I concentrate. I can see that.
Okay, all right. Well, don't burn a hole in the whiteboard. After that will be the Halloween Tree. There's an animated version of that, which actually Ray Bradbury wrote the screenplay for, and this is why I love that story. It's one of the reasons why I love that story so much is I love the animation.
Right.
It's bad 1970s animation. It's really bad, but when you're a kid,
very excited.
Oh, it scares it scares you. You get really scared, but also very intrigued. And then after that, after that, now we had a little bit of a tiff about this one. This is Rebecca. I just wanted to watch the Alfred Hitchcock version because I've seen Netflix's version of Rebecca.
But we're going to watch both because we need to discuss both.
Yes.
It's not about whether she enjoyed it or not.
No, I enjoyed both of them, but the second, like the newest one is, I don't know. I think it had a lot to say about the story. I liked that it added on stuff, but it also was it wasn't very good. Parts of it just wasn't very good. So
then we're going to be discussing Lolita.
Yes, both versions.
Both versions of
Stanley
the films.
Kubrick. Oh, there's 3 versions actually.
Is there 3? I thought it was only 2.
There's 3. But I think we're just going to do the Stanley Kubrick one and the Jeremy Irons.
Okay.
Because those are the 2 more well-known ones. I think there is an even older version. I'm not too sure. Also, guys, if you want to send in your community submissions to us, we like we said before, we're going to do a community read in the next 4 weeks. So let us know. We love to hear from you guys. We absolutely adore doing the community reads. So please send us in and don't be shy. Reach for the stars. You send us in something weird. Send us in something completely different. Send us something in, a classic that always gets overlooked or something, just whatever you want. Just send it in and we will read it and discuss it.
300 pages or less. That's
300 pages or less.
And anything fiction.
Yeah, anything fiction.
Drop it below into the comment section or drop it on our Instagram or wherever else you can find us.
But no weird fan fiction, okay? Like we let me just say that.
Okay.
Yeah. Good, close it down now.
Thank you very much for watching and tuning in. We appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much. Bye.